Hi, I am Chris from Airwindows, and I am going to try to do a epic marathon stream and see what we can make happen. Do a epic marathon stream and just for laughs, I'm going to put in an echo. Tempted to open up that window too. Just for laughs, I'm going to put in an echo. Tempted to open up that window too. Let's go to here. Put it on the old big stream. Make it so that I can find chat. That's maybe a little bright, but whatever. The purpose of this exercise is doing a marathon of debugging because I did not release SluSonic. So we're going to see what we can do about that. It's maybe a little bright, but whatever. The purpose of this exercise is that will at least show me whether things are busted or not. Because I did not release SluSonic. I probably don't need to have those meters and things on, so let's make those go away. That will at least show me whether things are. It's also maybe darker than it needs to be, so excuse me for a moment while I put on some more light. And I'm going to get chat where I can find it, I guess. It's going to be amusing to see. Yeah, I was unable to sleep, so I got rolling on this kind of early. Now I got to see how I can get this all together. And I may or may not, I'm not entirely sure. It's a kind of a cool aesthetic. It's like, oh, hi, there's me, and then there's me on the screen that you saw the video game on earlier, and then the little screen, and then the littler screen, and so on and so forth. Delay in practice. So this is all a matter of futzing around and figuring out what I'm doing. Oh God, there's 5 people here. Mel's here. Hey. Delay in practice. So let's see what we want to do. So this is all a matter of futzing around and figuring out what I'm doing. Oh God, there's. Yep, I will leave the chat, and I like to put it to all chat because things are generally fairly chill. Power user A. Yeah, who knows? Maybe I have to start streaming in the middle of the night. That'd be weird. But yeah. So here's the deal. What bugs are we squashing? I have to fix what was wrong with I have to fix the bugs that were in SluSonic. So I have my little SD card. I have a cup of coffee, even though it's 3 in the morning here. I was not able to sleep, so I figured I might as well just get going. I have a million different kinds of stream going on everywhere. And at some point I'm going to need to make a fire when it starts getting really chilly, but not yet. And this is the environment in which I'm going to work. I can continue on different things, but we're going to start with just finding what was going on with SluSonic. And that involves going in here and as we can see, I've got this set up to date modified, and I hadn't actually revisited it. I've been doing other things since then. I don't know what the heck I was doing. Oh, I remember what I was doing with Mojo. It had to do with this project, Big Fast Sign. And Big Fast Sign is my attempt at making a new console version, which runs faster and has a slightly different taper. It's not really Sign, it's a really primitive approximation. If I turn my audio up, I can have an endlessly echoing madness. That might be kind of cool. It'll be a little bit like Pink Floyd's Alan Psychedelic Breakfast. More than a little like that, in fact. If I get really bored, maybe I'll do that, but for now. And the advantage to that is it will stop me having to continue talking quite so much, so that'll be helpful. For now, we're going to leave that alone. Actually, let me put it on the far speaker, since this is just a weird thing to do anyway, so I might as well have the speaker playing it be over there, the one that's on screen. So what you're looking at right now is Big Fast Sign set up as this is apparently what you need in order to do a console stage with this very simple algorithm. But we're not doing that right now. My job today is to find out what went wrong with SluSonic, because I started making the video. I made the whole video. I couldn't figure out why it was only doing one level of SluSonic when I knew that I had made a sort of 4-stage thing. And this is pretty much what we can see here is this is SluSonic. I do in fact have it functional with this stuff. Problem being, we had an output clipper. This is all the filters. All of the stuff is basically alive and works. But we have a bug up here, and this is what I have to fix. And you will see how long it takes to walk through the entire process for this, because I have all of these things up and running, including the main thing. And I can go and fetch the Raspberry Pi for doing that stuff with it. I wonder how many levels of echo I'm going to get building up. Here's your problem. So let's talk about this. The rest of this apparently should work. I don't see any problem there, like including on the VST. have a quick look at that. I'll open up another window for that. Here's your problem. So let's talk about this. The rest of this I build the VSTs using separate code, but then I build all the other stuff off of the Mac VSTs, so we'll go through that. Here's SluSonic. Here's the VST of SluSonic. So I'll be doing the debugging here. This one's actually stereo because the way I know how to do VSTs, they all seem to default to functioning as basically stereo. We've got two instances of this. But we have the same thing here that we had in the original one, like where it says A times 20K plus 10K. That gives us the same thing as the AU version, defaulting to 10 to 30. But then these other ones, Kparam 2 goes from 0 to 1. And SluSonic proc, the VSTs always just go from 0 to 1. So what happens here, defaulting to 10 to 30. Let's make but then these other ones, Kparam 2 goes from more funky echoes on this, just for general laugh purposes. I want to hear more than one layer of echo going on just for laughs. I gotta do this, so I'm going to entertain myself somehow, and it will help my voice as I keep grinding through all of this. More funky echoes on this. So yeah, it's set up in VST mode where the parameters are expected to go from 0 to 1. Here's our problem. This stuff is fine. This CWET only goes from 0 to 1. So this is a version of my dry wet stages. Thing is, in order to make that work, C would have to cover the entire range. And I'm trying to figure out whether I have a D. I don't think I do. Only goes from 0 to 1. So this is there's also a classic electronic music piece that used similar techniques. And it was recording a guy in a room and then playing it back and re-recording it and playing it back and re-recording it. It made it into a weird sort of effect. Hey, Jazz, I wonder how many people are going to show up at 3 o'clock in the morning for me. 3:30 now. There's also a classic electronic music piece that used similar techniques. Maybe I should turn it up even louder. Recording a guy in a room and then playing it back. My normal listen volume, but only on one speaker to make it a little bit easier. I wonder how many people are going to show up at 3 o'clock in the morning for me. Grabbing the wrong control. Maybe that's not the wrong control after all. Maybe I should turn it up even louder. Oh no, that's what's happened. But only on one speaker. Oh, I know what happened. So don't mind me, I'm really kind of derping around as I get rolling for this. I know it's going to take me a while. Maybe that's not the wrong control after all. Yeah. Well, I got a little sleep. What ended up happening was I did the video and I posted the video, but I knew that I had debugging to do. So I was like, I'll do this tomorrow in my jam. I'll do this tomorrow in my live stream. And as I went to sleep quite early because I was like, okay, I finished up even before 9. I'm just going to crash out. And I did that. And then I was up at like 1:30 going, all right, I'm bolt up right now. I am awake and I don't seem to be falling back to sleep again. So clearly I have to do this, and you can hang out for, or not, but you can hang out for the entire basically the entire making the plugins and packaging them and doing all of that stuff. I'll have to cover up the keyboard for things like typing in passwords for GitHub, but that's a given. But yeah, and once I'm finished, the plugin will be live. You can see the whole thing because I got to do it anyway in order to have the plugin posted. So we're going to go through as if it was from scratch, and you'll see what is involved in the entire process. But yeah, and I have my endless echo mode. You don't see quite as much of that on the little screen there because the thing that I have here is if I don't have the coding showed, then we have a echo effect on the sound and also the echo effect on the video. But showing the, well, I'll switch over to that. I will show you the actual coding fixing part. So there's that, and then we'll see. If I don't have the coding showed, then we have a echo effect on the sound and also the echo effect on the video. But showing the, well, I'll switch over to that. I will show. Let's switch back. Actual coding fixing part. So back to our debugging. So here's your problem. This is the thing that went wrong. Is A wet, B wet, and C wet is param 2. Now that's supposed to cover all of these different things. So if it is here's what's happening. We're doing these in succession. So if it is the bottom, all of these things should be 0, and we have no slew only functionality. Up to 1/3, we should have only one stage coming in. After that, we should have the one stage fully engaged, and we start dry wetting a second stage in, so it continuously blurs into the next phase. Finally, we got the third stage, and it does a dry wet into the third stage and goes from there. And I've put biquad filters around all of the stages. We should have only one stage coming in. After that, we should have the one stage. And I calibrated them in such a way that so it continuously blurs into the next phase. It's not actually 5 biquads. In fact, there's no telling what it's going to be, so I'm going to take this comment away. But we have different levels of the biquadiness, and it maxes out to 4 instances. And as we keep introducing more of them, it starts out as a kind of a boost. And then we continue to have more as we come in. So if you have them all fully cranked, this, and there's a slight error in here, because it turns out when you calculate this, and this is relevant for some of my console stuff, if you have a biquad that is meant to be 0.5, that's actually supposed to be a simpler filter, not a biquad at all, the way that that is calculated. So I have not really incorporated that. I could get around it by picking a form of the calculation that doesn't go to the 0.5 on the final biquad. Turns out that's not actually correct. So you pick one where you've got the set of numbers, but the final number is something else. But here's the part that we're trying to fix. And it's going to be done by coming up with the correct amount. This was all worked out from a much larger dry wet thing. Dial this way back. My total amount of echoing, I feel, is too great. So we had like 8 stages, and we've edited it all. So here's the thing. This is how we debug this. If CWet is the smallest amount, goes 0 to 1, you have only one stage, and that's the part we're fixing. And if it's less than 1, then AWet is the first stage that we include, and that goes from 0 to 1, and we set CWet to just 0 again, because that one's not fading in and out at all. Here's how we are editing that. We're going to add the times 3 because we have potentially 3 full stages of it. This is actually fine. And there's an else if because we only want to use one of these at a time. Now if it's less than 2, but it wasn't less than 1, because if it's that, then it does that, and then it skips to the end. This is actually fine. If it's less than 2, then B is the new one that we need to go from 0 to 1, so it's going to be between 1 and 2, so B is C minus 1. That makes it B 0 to 1. A is always going to be 1, and C is going to be 0. This last one, there's a bug. So we're going to fix that too while we're at it. If it is 0 to 3, and it's not less than 2, then the final one is CWet minus 2. 3 is going to become 1, and so CWet goes 0 to 1. And then BWet and AWet equal 1, but we don't set CWet to 1. That's from earlier. That's from when there were even more stages. And this should be the final outcome for making it actually work as I finish up my first cup of coffee. I will probably have to skip off and start a fire, make another cup of coffee, but sometimes the bit that we're doing here is not actually the hard part. I just have to stay on top of it and figure out what I'm doing. So, next thing we do is look at our 2 kinds of VST plugin. Sometimes the bit that we're doing here is not actually the and this needs to match. So B times 3, same bug. So the next thing we do is look at, and then the rest of this is actually fine, but we're going to take this part, and this needs to match. So B times 3, same bug, and update it because that was also bugged. Now that we've got that, we're going over here because this is 2 stages. We got the 32-bit VST and the 64-bit. These run on both kinds of system. And same deal, we see how CWet minus 7, and then they're all defaulting to none of that actually had any effect on what was going on because we never got there because CWet was never larger than 1. Having done this, we can build these. Same deal, we see how CWet minus 7, and then they're all defaulting to none of Now what's happening here is I've deleted the build folder, and so it's doing the thing what the AU sometimes do, where it needed to build some of its working files in order to work, as if it was new and had never been built before. It made all of these bugs, which were basically, it started with AU effect base H, no such file or directory. It did not find it the first time I tried to build. That always happens with some of these AUs when I try to build them. The project tries to build this first and only finds this stuff afterwards. We try it again, and this time it's fine. And that should give us a couple of things. So one of the things I'm going to do is move some of this stuff around and try to keep organized, because that's kind of what got me with this bug, was I wasn't keeping organized enough. And here we have the component file. So let's see, firstly, we'll option drag it to the desktop and then put it in where it needs to go, and then we will test these. I missed that somehow. Get moving too fast, and here we have the component file. Yeah, as a matter of fact, you can do A plus B plus C, or A equals B equals C equals 1 in the C programming language. And I have found that to work pretty good. It is a kind of shorthand, yeah. Not everybody likes all forms of shorthand like that, but I sometimes do it that way. As a matter of fact, you can do A plus B plus C. So let's see. Or A equals B equals C equals 1. My latency is lower than it was before. I don't know what's going on there. Where are we at? I need my other cup of coffee. All forms of shorthand like that, but I sometimes. We are going to be copying stuff over into an SD card, but firstly, let's test. My latency is lower than it was before. If I was happy with the latency thing, I could listen to this all as it plays through the actual live stream. That might be amusing too, but for now, we're going to get back to this and try a couple of these things and see what they are. Here is Sonic. This is as much as I had on the video, and we keep going. Oh, hello. We have a bug. What's it doing? It's doing something. So what I'm going to do is play that through again and listen for when it cuts into being dark again, because it was not behaving the way it should. I have to fix that. Yeah, stream latency is fine. I don't need it to have a really instant latency. That's not the effect. See how it goes from bright to big again? We got more debugging to do. It wasn't quite as simple as I had thought, which is fine. That is fine. We're going to open these projects again and get back into it. So I dare say I can figure this one out. It'll be pretty obvious. Here's our VST. Here's our basic And I am pretty sure I can see what happened. So let's go and fix that. You may or may not have already spotted the same thing, but I will tell you. Oh no, it is a possibility to make it be quicker stream latency, just to make our playful echo effect on the stream be more amusing. But right now we got actual debugging to do. So here's the deal. This part's now fine. This part is not correctly working. So what happened? We got dry sample, and AWED coming in gives us increasingly what we had out of this. Then what happens here kind of needs to be, maybe we need to instantiate some more dry samples, because here's what's going on is I thought I could go last sample A equals 1 times B wet, and that would give me the dry sample for what was coming out of this, and that is not the case. So basically what I need to do is get the output of this and call that the I thought I could go last sample A. If we go all the way through here, I need to be able to have this input sample B the dry for stage 2. And then when we get all the way through this, this needs to be the dry for stage 3. And it's not. Instead, what's happening is we're switching to this. Like, see, we're going like last sample A. I'm taking this from the wrong place in the algorithm. Oh, well, we got other conversations going on? Let me have a look at chat. This needs to be the dry for stage 3. And it's not. Instead, what's happening is we're switching... deal with hi-hats and make them sound musical and smooth. Fair question. One of the things that you can do with hi-hats is what I'm doing with Susonic is just only let the super high frequencies be there. That will tend to smooth it out simply because the really aggressive high, the high mids are what make them be raspy. I'll demonstrate that a little bit earlier. So let's just make some more variables. That will tend to smooth it out simply because the really aggressive high, the high mids are what make them be raspy. I'll demonstrate that a little bit earlier. So let's just make some more variables. So here I've got dry stage A, dry stage B. We're going to do that thing that I was doing earlier here. Input sample is what goes into the next one, but then it gets changed, so we can't actually use it on stage B. So we're making dry stage A be doing that. And then we don't need to do it for stage C because we're always, if we get there, we're always using the output of it. And we're never needing to do further things with it. So let's quickly. But then it gets changed, so we can't actually use it on stage B. And so if we've got that, then we're including those. We don't need to do it for stage C because now, one question is, do we need to default it to, like, can this ever show up as a variable when we're not when we have it instantiated it. And you know, one thing we can do is initiate it to something.
Now, one question is, do we need...
We may never actually see this value, but it stops it from being like infinity or whatever once we've started it. Also, I'm going to have to start my fire here before too long. It's getting on towards 4 o'clock in the morning, and it's getting chilly in here, so we will, once I have actually debugged this, I'll make a fire, and then we'll start doing all the porting and making it different versions and posting and everything. But yeah, this turned out to be a little longer than I had expected.
Also, I'm going to have to start my fire here.
Let's,
It's getting on towards 4 o'clock in the morning.
let's make
Getting chilly in here.
this.
Once I have actually
Ooh, and we need left and right for these.
This turned out to be a little longer than I had expected.
And that'll make it a little more complicated, unfortunately, but whatever. We'll live with it. You get lost in stuff like that, and that's how you miss things. So where did we leave off with the, you know, I could be testing this out, but I'm already certain that I've got this. However,
you get lost in stuff like that, and that's how you miss things.
We need to also update these. So instead of last sample 8, it is dry stage A. Instead of last sample B, it's dry stage B, and that gives us that. So now we got to replicate that in the VST in stereo form, meaning that we've got more than one stage of it. So we've instantiated these, and we've got it in both of the forms. Remember to do both of the forms, as in this is the 32-bit and then the 64-bit bus. I like using stuff like Reaper where it's using the 64-bit bus, but other programs will silently start using the 32-bit bus if that's what they're using. You see folks are chatting about sound engineering. That's cool. Do that. And here's our initial one.
I like using stuff like Reaper where it's using the 64-bit bus, but other programs will silently.
And so we had dry stage A equal input sample, and so dry stage AL equals input sample L. And same for the right. So let's do that. Copy. And it's our output that we want to do.
So we had dry stage A equal input sample.
We change that to R, and then B similarly, but we'll change both of the parts.
And same for the right. So
BL equals input sample L, and BR equals input sample R. And then similarly to here, we've updated those. It says dry stage A and dry stage B in B and C stages. The convenient thing is we'll be able to copy and paste these directly. I may or may not do that. Also, Mel, I'm warming to the idea of trying to do your thing as a live stream event. I don't like the idea of you having to travel massively just to do this that you were wanting to do. So let's see. Where do we leave off? If I forget this, it'll be broken again, and I'll be even more confused. So let's not have that be broken again.
also, Mel, I'm warming to the idea.
Instead of dry sample, instead of last sample AL, we want it to be dry stage.
this, it'll be broken again, and I'll be even more confused, so let's not have that be broken again. Instead of dry sample, instead of last sample AL, we want it to be dry stage.
And that should fix one of the VST modes. So what we're going to do is, since they're supposed to be the same code, they're not supposed to be any different, and we've already updated this up here, we're going to just copy A wet, B wet, and C wet. Go to where that exists in the other one. I like sometimes when it all fits on the screen for me. We're going to have it all selected, and we're going to paste the replacement in. And we now have the dry stage stuff on that, and on the original one, we'll save and we'll build these. And if I'm correct, that will then be fixed. And we've done it for that. Oh, I'm starting to really feel the cold in here. I gotta make him a fire. Soon, soon. When I'm actually done with my work, I can make a fire, I can make breakfast, feed myself, things like that. Option drag to replace this one on the desktop. Drop that into the folder where I can find it. Same deal with here.
When I'm actually done with my work, I can make a fire.
I wonder if this will disclose anything. Nope, apparently not. That's the disclosure triangle in Finder. Place that. And now we can go back to our checking. Let's see if we have successfully debugged the thing. Excuse me. Open up. JumKit Mono and back to Slusonic. Does it smoothly go up to... This is also our last chance to change frequency. Do we want frequency to do anything more than this? I can make it be different frequencies. We could have it go right down to a very dark frequency if anybody thought that would help. Brighter. This is what was on the video. And it works. So we have our max boost here. Now, one of the things about the way this works, Slew only is calibrated to give roughly the same amount of volume out of its altered amount. It's a mix check tool. It's in monitoring. So Slew only, you're supposed to be able to switch to it and have it be a brightness only sound where it still more or less balances, still sounds like music and things aren't wildly out of it's pretty... Jess is asking if it's cold in Vermont, and it's pretty cold. It's probably around 10 degrees Fahrenheit here. My point with Slew only being it's volume adjusted so that it's supposed to wind up being about the same volume level when you switch to things like Slew only or subs only. It's supposed to still balance and not be wildly out of whack. What that means is when you're running multiple stages, it gets louder and louder as it gets brighter and brighter. What that means is maybe if we put in a lower max, like let's hear what this sounds like when we take it to 10K. What that means is when you're running multiple stages, it gets louder and louder as it gets brighter and brighter. Now let's play with it. What that means is maybe if back to Xcode And let's see if this is going to be more fun.
Let's hear what this sounds like when we take it to 10K.
Because with this one, I'll have to figure out how to adjust it to the VST, but with this one, we can just straight up tell it.
Now let's play with it.
Let's say 1K. What happens if we do slew only, which only gives us highs, but we're also filtering down to 1K, and then we're boosting? It may or may not be useful, but all I got to do is hit save.
I'll have to figure out how to adjust it to the VST, but
And build.
we can just straight up tell it. Let's say 1K.
And that's the AU.
What happens if we do slew only?
And if we drop this in
Gives us
here,
highs, but we're also filtering down to 1K, and then we're boosting.
fire up twisted wave again.
But all I gotta do
It won't see it unless I restart the program. That's one nice thing about this older stuff, is that you can see new components without having to reboot the computer. And now we have a version of the AU that goes right down to 1K. What's that sound like? Well, one thing that happens is the dry is actually giving us a filtered result. I'm not sure if I want that. And it's silent. So let's see what happens. Where do we start hearing it?
Well, one thing that happens is the dry is actually giving.
Okay, interesting.
I'm not sure if I want that.
Around about 6, we're starting to hear it at full crank.
And it's silent. So let's see what happens. Where do we start hearing it?
What if we had only one level of it? That would be about 333 here. So one stage. That kind of makes sense. So around 3K kind of works here.
So one stage.
6K definitely sounds like brightness.
Kind of makes sense.
And by the time we get to 10K, that's just kind of already as bright as you're going to need.
So around 3K kind of works here.
I'm warming to 5K. And the thing that I would kind of like to do, I feel like I would like to have the 0 to 1 bright go from unaltered to this. And then beyond. So let's make that happen. It'll be a little more to deal with, but I'm pretty sure I can tell you how that's going to go.
I would like to have the 0
So
to 1
back to here,
bright go
let's
from
call it 5
unaltered to this.
from starters, 5 to 30.
So let's make that.
Actually, you can't even hear 30, so let's call it 5 to 25.
It'll be a little more to deal with, but I'm
The whole 20 to 30
that's gonna go.
ended up being you couldn't really tell very much. Elf Actor Gate, yes, audio is repeating. We can make audio
From starters,
repeat a whole bunch
5 to 30.
by me boosting the levels here.
Here 30, so let's call it 5 to 20.
This is my little homage to Pink Floyd's
20 to
Alan
30
Psychedelic Breakfast.
Ended up being you
Marmalade,
couldn't
I like
tell very
marmalade.
much.
So
Elf Actor Gate, yes, audio is repeating. You can make audio repeat a whole
don't
bunch.
mind me, I got to amuse myself somehow while doing this kind of stuff.
The levels here. This is my little homage to Pink Floyd's Alan Psychedelic
I'll make it stop in a
Breakfast.
moment. Chased everybody away, I
Marmalade,
guess.
I like marmalade. So
Oh no, everybody left.
Elf activate.
So,
Yes, audio is repeating. You can make audio.
Here's the deal.
Don't mind me, I gotta amuse
The thing I
myself
was going to be
somehow looking at this
doing
kind of stuff. The levels here.
in order to make this work,
This is my little.
I can have the
I'll make it stop in a moment. Chased everybody away again.
the way that I can do this is to build in.
Here's the deal.
See,
The thing I was going to be doing.
Here's her 5 to 25K.
In order to make this work.
I think that's going to be fine.
I can have the.
Remember how we had A-wet, B-wet, and C-wet?
Chased everybody away again.
And
The way
A-wet is the
this
lowest
is
level.
Let's
Let's just steal this calculation
build
and
in.
repeat it again.
Deal. See,
And that will give us
here's her
filtering on this.
I think that's going to be fine. I can have the. Remember how we had A-wet, B-wet, and C-wet?
And
The way
A-wet is the
this
lowest
is
level.
to,
And that is
let's
going
just
to, we can
steal
even
this
include the,
calculation and repeat it again.
here,
See,
yeah, we can make a really bad comb filter with the YouTube latency. Whee.
this. I think that's going
I'm gonna make it stop. An interesting thing about this, now that I've made it stop again, you can set up your speakers using that kind of thing. You make a nice recording and you play the recording back in high resolution and put the mic, have a good mic, but you put the mic like facing the main screen and the speakers, record the output of your movie that you made of filming your speakers, and then play that back, and then record the output, play that back, and you will start to get the room sound, and anything that you have out of balance in your system will jump out like crazy. I was setting up the subwoofers that way, and it was quite effective, because as you continue to repeat it, presuming of course that your mic and everything is a good recording, you end up having out 2 or 3 levels of re-recording over and over again. Anything that's out of whack will just jump out like mad.
As you continue to repeat it, presuming of course that your mic is a good
Back into, I'm having a quick look at the
you end up having
that chat. So here's the thing.
3 levels of re-recording over and over again. Anything that's out of whack will just jump out.
I'm gonna need to do a dry stage D.
I'm having a quick look at the. So here's the thing.
Dry final by quad. Because you see, I'm doing this, and if A-wet is larger than 0, it will apply it. But currently, it's only running that, but it's not actually calculating any of the dry and wet stuff. So I need to include some of this stuff in here, meaning that I'll also need to do it for the VSTs, but it may very well be worth it. So here we are. See, we're back to A-wet because this calculation is stuff that will only happen between the oh.
But it may very well be worth it. So here we are. See, we're back to A-wet because this calculation is stuff that will only happen between the
So we're just going to check and find what the input actually was for our final stage. And if we're doing all of the filtering, then it's going to be AWET's always going to be 1. It'll be always full crank. But if we're going between completely raw and that first level, we want the completely raw to not be filtered. And so we have to do a crossfade with that. And it might give us an interesting tone to work with some of our functionality on the dry to first level of slew only. So let's see what we can get out of there.
Completely raw and that first level, we want the completely raw to not be filtered. And so we have to do a crossfade with that. And it might give us an interesting tone.
I'm also having a peek at what I have with trim. Where's trim?
On the
Here's my magic number for trim. That ended up being what the amplification stage needed to be. I often like looking for funky numbers out of mathematics. In case it happens to be a funky number out of mathematics, it happens to be the exact value for something like that. Like if you take the previous sample, take the sample, subtract the previous sample, what would you add to make it so that the brightness was as loud as it previously was? And it turns out to be like that.
In case it happens to be a funky number out of mathematics, it happens to be the exact value for something like that. Like if you take the previous sample, subtract the previous sample, what would you add to make it so that the brightness was
oh wait, I'll just take it from
was, and it turns out to be like that.
This is literally the code that I would want for that. Dry final bar quad equals input sample and so there we go. That should now work. Let's test it and then apply it to the VST, just in case something went terribly wrong. I'm guessing it will probably work though, so let's find that out. Do not put that in the remove from sidebar. I dropped it in the wrong place. I was supposed to drop it in this folder.
So there we go. That should now
I am quite eager to build my fire. It's definitely on the cold side here. And it's kind of how I roll sometimes, is it's like, oh, I am doing the debugging because people should have this plugin soon, and so therefore I will not eat or sleep or worm. And that's not literally true, but there's an element of it, and I got to just kind of moderate that. So here's our filter, here's 5K. And we crossfade into one level of slew sonic. This is our max frequency. So this is the kind of thing, Mel was actually talking about this earlier, about how you might want to smooth hats and things. Well, this is kind of doing that. We're now only hearing hat, and we can get a sort of soft, silky thing going on.
So this is the kind of thing,
and then that's no filtering. Dark to bright to ever more bright. And then if that is too bright, we can take frequency and dial it back. We're actually making it quieter, and I'm not sure if I'm thrilled about that, but...
And then if that is too bright, we can take frequency and dial it back.
I'm not sure frequency is the right word for this. Maybe we should call it mute. Shall we call this mute instead of frequency? Because that's kind of what it's doing. The idea is that it can suppress aliasing, but now we're using it to suppress the sound.
I'm not sure frequency is the right word for this.
And this is about as muted as we can get.
Maybe we should call it mute. Shall we call
Full mute and full bright cancels out a bit.
That's kind of what it's doing. The idea is that it can suppress aliasing, but now we're using it to suppress the sound.
I kind of like the tone of this. Average will make your hi-hats dull as anything. You may not want that.
Full mute and full bright cancels out a bit.
See, with something like this, we can set mute to around 10K. It's a fairly steep roll-off because as we have full brightness, we have the full calculation of stages.
Will make your hi-hats dull as anything. You may not want that. And with something like this, we can set mute to around 10K. It's a fairly steep roll-off because as we have full brightness, we have the full calculation of stages.
I think it will often be useful in this not fully brightened quality.
I think it will often be useful in this not fully brightened.
Because you can still get a lot of fizziness out of it. And then if it's too intense this way, pull it back until you have your desired level of where you want the symbols or whatever to sit.
And then if it's too intense this way,
Dial it back and we bring in more mid-range.
pull it back until you have your desired level of where you want the symbols or whatever to sit.
Okay, I am going to call that successful.
Dial it back and we bring in more mid-range.
Oh, you were going to ask me about the... Oh, you mean this one that I'm doing right now? Fair. Understandable. So now what we got to do is apply that dry-wet stuff that we just did to the VST in both of its stages. Remember to do both of them.
Oh, you were going to ask me about the... Oh, you mean this one that I'm doing right now? There.
So I needed a dry final biquad, so I'm going to need two of them for the VST.
So now what we got to do is apply that dry wet stuff that we just did to the VST in both of its stages. Remember to do both of them.
L and R. That was at the 64-bit one, so I got to scroll up to find the other one, which is here. Then we steal
L and R.
a wet from here.
That was 4-bit one, so I gotta scroll up to find the other one. Which is here.
And now duplicate what I had there, so
And
still fairly straightforward. Oh, right, also I had tabs in here. Do L and R for everything.
there, so
It's kind of mind-rotting going along like this, but at the same time, if I forget any of these details, stuff gets broken and wrong, and it gets by me. So, oh, and that noise that just kicked in, if you heard it, if you have good enough subwoofers, is my furnace firing up. I'm having trouble recently with the furnace not necessarily firing immediately, so it belches smoke, and that's not great because it gets into my airspace. I hope to be able to fix that at some point. Cost you to try to do that. This should have just done our final filter, applying those things, and it still looks basically right. So next thing, and if I build this, I just built that, I'll build it again. We probably just finished. Oh, but I don't remember if I dragged the other one over to the desktop. I think maybe I did not. I think I've just been, can't do that. So, oh, and there's more, I forgot stuff. So let's just build our AU that we know is right, and then open the VST again, because I forgot stuff, and I'll tell you what I forgot. This bit still only is going down to 10K. I wanted it to go down to 5. This is only the label. 5 plus 20. That actually should be the only change I have to do. So let's do that there. And then we also have to do it on the code. Code, and here we are again. Build this again, double check that the frequency 20K plus 5, 20K plus 5. Building it again and again just to make sure that I remember to do it. Option, drag to the desktop and into components. Likewise, option drag. To the desktop and then into VSTs. And now we should have what we were playing with, but in both VST and AU form. Let's make sure that's true. Interestingly, it depends on what kinds of sounds you want on an electric guitar. I'll tell you one of the things I was just experimenting with after I have tested this to make sure it works. I'm going to open same sound up again. We're going to reconfirm that this is still working. And we forgot yet another thing. I was going to change the names. So back into the fray. Can't do anything right, or we're trying to do everything right. That's the problem. And we're going to open all of these projects right back up again because we forgot to do the thing. And then we're going to build everything over again, and then we're going to copy all the files around over again.
And we forgot yet another thing. I was going to change the names.
Mute.
So back into the fray.
It was going to be called mute.
We're trying to do everything right. That's the problem.
And I think we'll make this default to 15K because it'll equate to about the VST should default to 15K too. Now, having done that, that's all we need to do here for the AU to be done. We don't have the names in here. We have the names in here. 0.5 equates to halfway on the control, and that equates to 15K for the AU, so that should still work. And here's where it says frequency, so we're going to change that to mute here as well. Now we should finally be done. We fervently hope. Seriously though, I think we probably are. Now we gotta open this stuff up again.
Now we should finally be done. We fervently hope. Seriously though.
And here's our AU and VST once more. Again, option drag to desktop. This is the one I'm going to bundle into stuff. And drop it into components folder. Option drag this guy to desktop. Here's our AU and VST once more. Again, option drag to desktop. This is the one I'm going to bundle in. And now let's check to see that we have that being updated. Drop it into components folder. Drag this guy. Yeah, you see, there are some interesting things about guitars, but that depends very much on your context. Firstly, let's try a different thing. You're not going to hear this in stereo, but no, I'm not going to hear it in stereo either, but it'll be a different sound.
You see, there's some interesting things about
I don't think I tested the VST either.
But that depends very much on your context.
So this, I think, had brighter mics, or this is overheads or something, so... So that is a soft and silky hi-hat coming from Solution, muted down to 13K and then brightened as far as it'll go. And we never tried the VST to ensure that that was working.
Hi-hat coming from Solution. Even down to
But
the
it should be in
and the
recent
correct
effects.
filter.
Sonic, yes. And it says mute, and it defaults to 15K, very good. I believe we have a pair of working plugins. Man, that's bright. This is why I had to put in a filter. If we have it at full crank, we can clip. And that clipping real obvious.
I believe we have a pair of working plugins.
If you cut it down, we don't have to clip as hard as all that.
Man, that's bright. This is why I had to put in a filter.
Okay, man, I'm cold. Depending upon what you're doing with amps and things, one of the things I noticed in recent work that I did, taking apart my cheap high watt. I got a high watt in hopes it was going to be something truly awesome, knowing that there's a Marshall 5 watt out there, and there's a slightly cheaper high watt 5 watt, and the Marshall 5 watt is all tube. And I took apart the high watt, and it's super duper not all tube. It's just a couple of tubes as power and clip stage, and then everything else is all like op amps and crap, and I was very unimpressed. So I found a way of running the input. I pulled two capacitor legs up and put a 1 microfarad, I think it was a 1 microfarad film cap between those two places, patching the input directly to the grid of the tube and bypassing all of the solid state stuff. Unfortunately, when I did that, it was very, 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 very low volume. And I had to use a particular stomp box, a color driver stomp box, with a super high output to get like distortion and gain and sound out of it. At which point I found that I could get a really smooth, sizzly, distorted sound, but with some of my settings, you'd set it for guitar brightness, and much like old Jimi Hendrix recordings or whatever, I was getting radio stations. So some of your classic guitar tones that you get off of stuff like that, part of the sound is that the guitar going into the amp is so treble boosted that it is boosting radio frequencies as coming in, being picked up off of the wires and stuff. And that's part of the sound. So be cautious about trying to get certain kinds of sounds and then filtering all the highs off your guitars. That's not necessarily how that works at all. Post-clipping, you darken again. Pre-clipping, it can go crazy bright. And post-clipping would be what Pellinor is talking about as the IR choice. So we have successfully completed this. I promised myself that I would be able to make a fire and get warm if I finished all of the coding. And that is not actually responsible humaning. I have things to learn as far as that is concerned, but it is a fine time for me to split off for a moment and get that going. So we'll switch the scene over a little bit. And, not letting yourself eat or be warm until you finish your work is kind of insane. Yes, Power User. I don't know if that's what you meant, but worth putting a little work into. One thing they have done is I put water in this pot on the top of the stove. That keeps it from getting too dry. sketches from last night. Got fire making Foley sounds today. And rolled up cardboard pieces, a little piece of birch bark. Birch bark is special stuff if you're making a fire because it is very oily bark, so it'll catch fire like something fierce. And take several pieces because I don't want to futz around not able to start a fire properly. Here's a little bag full of a bunch of random tinder and stuff. Sprinkle some of that in there. Stacking wood up on top of the rolled up paper. That is my form of recycling. I get paper bags when I go to the grocery store, and then I tear them in half and put them inside half of a toilet paper roll, making these little things that are kind of like endirons or like stanchions, but they are also tinder. Now, I need to not put too many pieces of wood in to start this off because it'll be too smoky and fail to catch if there's too much thermal mass in there not wanting to catch fire. I have to get it going and then remember to follow up on that. And hey, yeah, this is green lighting, but it is a color thing, so that is a flame. We will probably see other flames. Get another flame going. Yeah, this is green lighting, but it is a color thing, so that is and this is from an egg carton. And you can see I have a fire beginning to start. This thing is the damper. I do not want that closed yet, and then I will close this and it will begin gradually warming up. And I may go and make another cup of coffee, something that I could conceivably do. But yeah, it'll be warm before too long. It'll take a little while. So let me do that, and let me also go and get a little playful, another cup of coffee, something that I could conceivably do. So what I'll do is I'll aim it there, and then we'll have a sort of crazy echoing thing going on while I'm off making my cup of coffee. So let me do that, and let me also go and get a little playful, another cup of coffee, something that I could conceivably do. So what I'll do is I'll aim it there, and then we'll have a sort of crazy echoing thing going on while I'm off making my cup of coffee. So let me do that, and let me also get a little playful, another cup of coffee. So what I'll do is I'll aim it there, and then we'll have a sort of crazy echoing thing going on while I'm off making my cup of coffee. So let me do that, and let me also get a little playful, another cup of coffee. better fix this. It's a little too loud. Fellow says this is not going to end well. Oh, maybe not. Maybe not. Yeah. And there is a diffusion filter on the camera. Yeah, it is actually a Tiffin Smoke 2 filter. Fellow says this is not going to end well. Oh, maybe not. Maybe not. I'm turning the drone down. It'll gradually fade off. Yeah, it is actually a Tiffin Smoke 2 filter. Oh, it says this is not going to end well. Oh, maybe not. Maybe not. I'm turning the drone down. It'll gradually fade off. Yeah, it is actually a Tiffin Smoke 2 filter. Oh, it says this is not going to end well. Oh, maybe not. Maybe not. I'm turning the drone down. It'll gradually fade off. It is actually a Tiffin I got my coffee ground. I like a kind called Fogbuster, Pierce Brothers. So local, I get it at co-op. I've been actually going to a store that roasts its own beans, and it's pretty good, but they don't have anything that quite replaces Fogbuster, which is an extremely dark roast. I got my coffee ground. I like a kind called Fogbuster, Pierce Brothers. So local, I get it at co-op. I've been actually going to a store that roasts its own beans, and it's pretty good, but they don't have anything that quite replaces Fogbuster, which is an extremely dark roast. I got my coffee ground. I like a kind called Fogbuster, Pierce Brothers. So local, I get it at co-op. I've been actually going to a store that roasts its own beans, and it's pretty good, but they don't have anything that quite replaces Fogbuster, which is an extremely dark roast. I got my coffee ground. I like a kind everybody. That has started. Here, let's get back into the echo craziness just for laughs, and I can throw another log on this fire and the coffee will be done pretty soon. So all things considered, rest of this morning is going all right. There we go. Let's get back into the echo craziness just for laughs, and I can throw another log on this fire and the coffee will be done pretty soon. I'll be back in a minute. So all things considered, rest of this morning is going all right. There we go. Let's get back into the echo craziness just for laughs, and I can throw another log on this fire and the coffee will be done pretty soon. I'll be back in a minute. So all things considered, rest of this morning is going all right. Let's get back into the echo craziness just for laughs, and I can throw another log on this fire and the coffee will be done pretty soon. I'll be back in a minute. So all things considered, rest of this morning is going all right. Let's get back into the echo craziness just for laughs, and I can throw another log on this fire and the coffee will be done pretty soon. I'll be back in a minute. So all things considered, rest of this morning is going all right. Let's get back into the echo craziness just for laughs, and I can throw another log on this fire and the coffee will be done pretty soon. I'll be back in a minute. So all things considered, rest of this morning is okay. Now we dial that craziness back. We have our fire going. I can show it to you in the reflection off the door. Okay. I have my cup of coffee, and we will return to our day of work. We have our fire going because we've now got Sonic done. Actually, don't mind me. I'm just going to sit right here for a minute, warm up. I have my cup of coffee, and we will return to our day of work. My synthesizer thing has a nice little coffee shelf there because we've now got Sonic done, and we are apparently doing a echo zone. Sit right here for a minute, warm up. It will gradually fade off, I think. So where were we? Let's actually stop all of that nonsense for a moment here. Apparently, I'll have a quick glance at. Not everybody left. I will get back to chat. once I have warmed up a little bit. So, I'm going to be using this stuff. These are my notes on how I port the VSTs to Windows and then Linux. And the process that I follow in making them into signed AUs and VSTs. Because that's I'm actually more warm than I need to be up there. As Chris's shirt catches fire and burns off of his back. Don't need that. Except for this is not that. This is Bitruit Guide to Zoxbox for the Zoxboxes I have over there. And this is Moog instructions. So that's fine. I'm thinking one of the things that I'm going to be needing to do, and one of the reasons that I was distracted enough to not have SluSonic correct right out of the gate, is that I've been finishing up a song, and it's actually a song with vocals and harmonies and lyrics and stuff. I don't think I'm going to be able to do a full album that way. I think I'm going to need to jump back into synthetic instrumental stuff. And I can drop another album on Bandcamp, but I'll be doing it the way that I did the first one. It'll be more resembling Welcome to Free Luna than the single I will put out. But I got a song, and I'm pretty darn close to finishing it. You've been hearing bits of the recording sessions in some of the recent work. One of the things I've been thinking about is the keyboard here. I ended up going whole hog on an Ovation Summit because that was my notion for what the best top-of-the-line modern synthesizer is. I think that the sonority it can get is substantial, and it is using the same technique that I use on the modular stuff. In fact, let me get up and point the camera over again. It'll be warming up soon enough. I just have don't mind me, I'm going to take a quick peek at chat and oh, Power User is into the filters. Yep, I am a Tiffin fan. I like Tiffin filters. Power User, if you were interested in doing the Airwindows look, all of my lenses are SLR Magic lenses. They're SLR primes with very wide apertures, like 0.095 maximum. And that's the kind that will usually be like 16 or 8. It's an aperture of 0.95 maximum, meaning it has a very narrow depth of field, especially if you darken it up. And they are also always using that Tiffin Smoke 2 filter. So that is the Airwindows look off of video. Beyond that, it's a Blackmagic camera, but the look often comes off of the lens and any filters you might use as much as the camera itself, as long as the camera is reasonably good. So yeah, power user mentioned the glimmer glass filter. I have even more vinyl than that. One of the things I've been thinking about doing is trying to do vinyl days or something like that, because I know some of the vinyl in the vinyl collection could be played on stream. People do react videos of stuff like that, and then some of it you can't. Like Beatles, AC/DC, stuff like that you can't. Even brief little snippets of it. But I've been wondering about doing maybe videos like how to get the sounds of these things. Pellinor in the chat was also saying metal guys double track or even quadruple track their guitars and hard pan left and right. Yep, indeed.
But I've been wondering about doing maybe videos like how.
And I am caught up with the chat. Oh yeah, no, Pellinor, that's the thing, is I am very much a modular guy. I really enjoy this doohickey. So one of the things that pleases me greatly, so I've always kind of, I was building that up even before I had resources to really dive into it, and then it just went kind of bonkers. I don't think it's going to expand any farther than that. It's just like optimizing what fits within those cases. The cases are Pittsburgh modular cases, and I quite like them. So now that I have a fire made that I can keep throwing logs on, and my coffee made, we've got stuff to do. Namely, we're going to put out Slusonic. I have done both of the versions. The Retro Mac AU and Retro Mac VST are what I start with, and that's what we've just done. Both of the things are fully functioning.
We're going to put out Slusonic. I have done both of the versions.
So our next step is this little doohickey, which is an SD card. I might actually be wanting this pretty soon too, which is although the SD card will plug into the laptop directly, but the thing is, when I start using emulations, you can see up here it says Windows 7 and Ubuntu Studio Linux, and that will become very relevant. Printing pictures. Pretend you didn't see that. You wouldn't be able to figure out what that is anyways. So that is where I make the Linux Raspberry Pi version, and this is where I'm storing code. So what we're going to do is copy over. Well, actually, we're not even going to copy over the plugins just yet. In fact, we're not even going to open the SD card just yet, because we're not at that stage. We're at this stage. Open up the VST so I can find it. And we're following the stuff on this page of instructions. I had to write these because, as you can see, there is so much to keep track of that I just get lost. So I operate on lists of recipes and instructions and things. Oh, if the word's too much money-y thing for you, don't get involved in modular synths. It's a terrible idea. This thing, VST project, is how I make the Windows version.
Oh, if the word's too much money
and we're gonna
for you, don't get involved in modulars.
Cut off the echo for just a moment because things are getting serious. And I has launched Parallels. So we're running in a version of Windows 7. I don't let it talk to the internet. And here we are. We now have a Windows machine running on the antique Mac laptop. And we're going to go to a folder called Projects and drag in from the Mac desktop VST project. Boop. Go in there and drag in the code. And the VST source for the Mac, we're taking SluSonic Proj, SluSonic, and SluSonic CPP and H. Yeah, you are living my life as far as me doing these things. I don't need to have this open any longer unless I needed to remember which one it was. If I was doing lots of things, then it would maybe need to keep a reference of where I was at. So now we are launching Visual Studio 2015. Sometimes it complains because it all runs a little faster because this antique laptop is on an SSD drive. SSD. Jas, you have a Polyvox? Ooh. Is it a Polyvox or is it like an Erica Synths? Because you can do knockoff Polyvoxes fairly effectively, much like I have I don't have a 303, but I have a Zoxbox. 2, actually, and they are home built and I built them. So my acid synth stuff runs off of this. And that might have more than a little to do with what I'd like to do for another album. I'd like to do an album where I dug into some of those things a little bit more, but also maybe snuck in vocals and things now that I can do that, because I've been working really hard on being able to cover all these bases. But speaking of covering bases, we do have to get through, oh yeah, original poly, that's exciting. Always nice. So this says, dragging a copy of VST project to projects, done. Dragging the ACH and proxy files, done. Open in Visual Studio, Control-Shift-O. Often I have to write these things down because I keep remembering that. How much did this being the modular? Scary question. Control-Shift-O. And that means I go to here. And I've now opened it. Rename VST Project 32 to your plugin 32, which is SluSonic. It's going to be definitely a little bit pokey, but because it's on the SSD, this is also one of those places where if I make a typo, I'll be very sad. So certain places I have to work really hard to do it exactly right every single time, or it will come back to haunt me. header file, Shift-Alt-A, double-click the header. It adds it to this list. Shift-Alt-A under source files, click and then Control-click to discontinuously add these two. Once I have done those, we can build SluSonic 32. And that's the start. I'll sip my coffee while it's busy doing that. Now it's done that. Rename your plugin 32 to your plugin 64. So we'll click on here again. Do another click. Have to click away before doing anything else or it will fail to accept the new name, and then update this to 64 and build the new version. Often there are ways to scriptify these things, and I've never had a lot of luck being able to make that stuff work. So this is my script. I follow these steps by hand every time. Sometimes for hundreds of plugins. We have now built the 64, so we could close the solution. Or indeed, we could close this because we're done this time. We didn't have anything more here, so release. Control-click technology again. Running in the virtual machine, I have to click on this and then hold it down for a moment to make sure I can drag it off and it turns into that little folder, meaning it will copy. You see they showed up here. And it showed up there because they were on the Finder desktop built-in error before I had this stuff debugged. Having done this, now that I've dragged the DIL files, I can also add them to VSD plugins, although I haven't really done much on the Windows machine. I used to like run my private copy of Reaper in here more often. I could do that. Double-clicking will do it. This is an old copy of Reaper. I have never registered this one, although I have a registration because I wanted to see how long it would let me do it and just politely bug me. See, it says this is not free. I have in fact bought it. I just have not put in the registration. You've been evaluating it for 2394 days, and I've run it 92 times, and I'm still evaluating, and it will let me. This is one of the things I like about Reaper, is the generosity of letting people who don't have any money use the stuff. And we're playing Alien Kittens. And we can punch in, here's our giant list of everything. And we can run that, and having done it, it worked. So we can now, how do we quit out of this? This is how. Let's save. So that is why I like Reaper, is they're very generous with letting people try their stuff out. I have never done anything. I keep doing that just to make sure that it's still consistent, although I suppose new versions might change, but I trust them not to. Raper combined with Airwindows means no matter who you are, no matter how little resources you have, you could put together music. And eventually you will buy a Reaper license and get on the Airwindows Patreon. But you don't have to. We're not going to take the stuff away from you if you don't have the resources. So having done this, we have now got to continue making Slusonic. So I've just copied stuff over from there. I've established that it worked. Up one level, delete the build folder, VST 2.4, and DB file. What that means is I'm not allowed to distribute this folder, so I have to remove it before putting it on GitHub. And so I do. And then this VC is a debug file, and it's like 28 megs or something like that. Something like that. And we delete these, which basically means put them in the recycle bin. Now I've got that. Here's the enclosing folder. Rename it to. And this is what all the other stuff is going to get built out of. And we drag this to the desktop. And then delete that. We can empty the recycle bin. I like it to not expand over this tiny hard drive. And we're done with the Windows zone. The Intel Linux build is also a virtual machine, but it's operated somewhat differently. In fact, I think this is where I do put in the SD card. We're going to command drag this stuff, which will copy it and or up it. And go over here, and we're going to populate this stuff. Firstly, let's option drag this to the Windows collection. And then I'm going to make a change here, which is the Linux doesn't need any of this. This was Windows stuff. Linux goes directly to just only the VST code files and operates from there. So now we'll draw that to source, Windows VST source. So now we've got this, and it's got some of the plugins that we're going to release, and then we need to add the Linux one and the Linux Pi one, and then later we're going to make the signed stuff. So we're going to this, which is going to be where we put our code. And all these little folders are empty, except for this one does have CMake lists, but CMake lists on this does already have Slusonic, because I had built the earlier version without having finished debugging it, or without having finished it, honestly. Yeah, Pellinor, all of my stuff is built off of the virtual machines, and they all live in little boxes disconnected from the internet, and they only talk through the SD card. So let's see, where were we at? Firstly, Mac AU. SluSonic. So since we're copying to a removable volume, it will let me just drag and drop. And rather than, oh, but I have screwed up. You know why? Because I did not remove the build folder. So let's take a moment and do the thing that I do for that. Check this out. I made a little script. CD Airwindows. CD means change directory in Linux and Unix. And I dragged the folder onto the terminal window, which fills in all of the path. So now I'm in Airwindows. Drag this over. Find period dash name build exec rmr da 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 da. This is a remove all the build folders in the entire Airwindows thing. And it found a build folder in it. It says no such file or directory after it's removed it for some reason, but it does show me what it's found, so I'm leaving it alone. And we had two SluSonics, we had Wait, Mojo, and Holt that were sitting around. And now there are no build folders, so we can get it back out of terminal again. In fact, it has edited those things now because they are more recently modified because the build folders got deleted out of them. We've got our AU. Mac VST. Same deal. Drag it over. And that is what I'm going to be walking through the make the signed version of. Windows VST, again SluSonic, Linux VST CMake lists is fine. Go to source. Weirdly, all of these are, oh no, actually it's not that strange. The modification dates in the Linux machine are a little weird. It's a confused machine. It doesn't understand what day it is. It's really out of touch. So, source SluSonic Linux VST. Copy that over. Once I finish doing enough of this stuff, I will have breakfast also. But worry about that later. I gotta warm this place up with that fire, and I gotta finish doing this work. That is all of the formats I have on this SD card. That'll get me through the both the Linux builds, and then I gotta go over to this machine, which I will be no longer showing the screen of, and I'll do the signed Mac builds. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to eject this. Well, what have we got in the trash? Oh, build. Because the next thing is to fire up Ubuntu Studio. Now here's how this one works. Firstly, I gotta click on here to make this mouse button work. And we're going to stick this USB stick in here, and it will show up in the Ubuntu thing and ask, do I want it to be on the Mac or the Ubuntu side? We're gonna do Ubuntu side. It's gonna open up over here. And then I gotta do some stuff. Namely, we're going to go in here. We don't need to update CMake lists because it built it before, but what we're going to want to do is update this. That is our previous version, and if we drag this over to its new home, there's a new code in the old place. There's the source, so we come out of here. And we have forgotten a thing, so let's open terminal here. Check this out. I have to remember to do this. I believe that it caused me problems before. I've copied over DS store from macOS. It's just not supposed to be there. So since I didn't remember to do it on the USB stick, I'll do it here and on the USB stick. It remembers what I have in here, so I have this process of CD over to whatever the new place is, and then rm-r dot asterisk. Never rm-r asterisk. Some places that can blow up the entire machine. But now that I've done that, if I ls-a, there are no longer the funny dot files off of macOS. And so we can close this here. And let's just go and do that over again. Opening the terminal there. And doing the same thing. And now the one that we're going to copy to GitHub doesn't necessarily have secret hidden dot files that it probably wouldn't copy anyhow, but just to be sure. So here we are so far. And we've got our new source files. And we go to our build folder. Open a terminal here. The Raspberry Pi won't let you do that, or at least my instance of the Raspberry Pi won't let you do that. I'm never quite sure that that's going to work for people either. I have seen people having problems with it, but we'll see. And let's see. Our magic incantation, having gone to the build folder, is cmake ... which goes down a level, and which does something or other, like run this for each instance. Make. It's a fairly simple little incantation. And we make this roll, and off we go. It will be building all of the things. And I'm going to go and get the Raspberry Pi machine now, because that's the next step. So I think I'm going to run the Raspberry Pi on this little screen. Often I'll patch it through to the screen that I'm currently using to see what the streaming is. We've got Linux people who are giving me better incantations for the Unixisms. I entirely believe you. Only reason I do the ones that I do is because they have worked for me, and so I stick to what I know. So we're actually going to kind of get this going where it stands. Scoot some other stuff out of the way a little bit. Another mouse. I think this might be acceptable power for this. So tip positive, sleeve nag. I think that might have been the one. There's no telling. Hey there, yeah, it's 5:27 in the morning here. We are doing the epic version of debugging and posting, and something I'm going to want to do is take this little itty bitty miniature. This probably is going to work. I reckon this is going to be the one. I do have to plug it into something though. Roach that out of the way and set this here so that the wire can run over to something. Here's our HDMI thing for the Raspberry Pi. No reason not to get that going right away. I power it off of the main desktop, so all I need is what I don't apparently have right here. Why don't I have the correct cable? I'll be able to go and find one, I know that, but why don't I have the correct cable? And the USB 3 to USB 3 cable, why don't I have that? Was I using it somewhere? Did I drop it and have it fall down? Or is this in fact it? No, this is a this is a USB to something else, and this is a USB to USB-C to USB something else. Where'd my cable go? Well, I'll go and find one. While everything builds, or is this it? No, that's a headphone cable. Or is it here? Nope, this is connected, but it is to another USB 3, 2 or something. Yeah, mysteriously missing the right cable. Back in a moment. USB-C to USB-C cable. Who are the drum heads? What drum heads? Oh, jazz. Yeah, back in the day I did that. I had to give it up. Still, you're keeping me company, so props for that, definitely. Let's power up. A Raspberry Pi. Does it need to have a screen to function? Alrighty. Well, we've got a screen. It says no signal, and the Raspberry Pi is not turning on. But at least the screen turns on, so there's that. So what's up with this? Why is this not working? We're supposed to be able to power the Raspberry Pi by connecting it to a USB-C. I suppose it could be that this cable is no good. We'll find out. Let's plug it into something else. Plug it into that. Up. That time it lit up. I don't know what it still was before, but this time it's happy. And ta-da! So that looks a little pretty flaky, but it is working. It is also whining faintly, being a grumpy little Raspberry Pi, or a grumpy little monitor rather. So we will be getting to that once we're finished with the other one. Yeah. Orbit Kick is the kick drum synth. I do not think I'm going to be doing that today because I didn't bank on needing to do Slew Sonic practically from scratch. Yeah. You can kind of hear, I'm not sure whether you can, I can kind of hear this not especially happy little monitor derping along. Another way that I've sometimes been able to do it is running the HDMI into a video capture and then like firing up OBS or whatever, and then the